Hello, beloved,
Welcome to the Sacred Sister podcast,
where we normalize the magic and sacralize the mundane.
In this podcast, we open up dialogue on metaphysical subjects, self-healing tools, expanding consciousness, and deepening awareness.
We're here to support you in co-creating a life full of healing, meaning, and magic. And the lineup of the season is fire, so make sure to subscribe if you're not already.
I'm your host, Britt, certified self-inquiry and alignment-based Smart Flow yoga instructor, self-healing song channel, and personal transformation coach, guiding women to gain radical self-awareness in order to reconnect with their most expressive and vibrant self.
And I'm your host, Hannah, a certified astrologer, ordained priestess, and rebirth coach. And I help women integrate past life and ancestral traumas to give birth to their higher self and manifest their wildest dreams into reality.
We're really grateful that you're here.
And together,
we're here to serve as your
Sacred Sister.
Let's dive in.
Make no mistake, there's others who may come, those who have misplaced faith in the one, those who have disgraced angels in love. So what will you do when they show up? Are you gonna hide your greatness, play small? Are you gonna cave or scale the great wall? Are you gonna beat the drums and stand strong? Are you gonna act how you have all along? Well, I hope not. This is not time for the old you. Everybody rise right now. You're a soldier, you are a warrior, a lover, a high priestess. You are the keeper of all the divine secrets. Your heart is the key, it's the password that'll deactivate the reactor, that'll reimagine what you were past and put that whack program on blast, man. Fuck all of that trash you were taught, dude. This is not your truth, this is not you. All my queens and goddesses, where you at? What have you not been saying just to attract some asshole? Girl, he does not deserve you. That's not a problem that y'all should work through. Don't stifle the clarity of your soul. Words like rifles and eyes like gold. Hold all people in your sphere to a standard.
Is that message not so good? So, welcome. Hi and welcome to Sacred Sister Podcast, everyone. That song, that snippet that you just listened to is from a song called The Cure from today's guest, Zen Tempest, or Gabriel Rima. He is a conscious hip-hop artist, and we're so excited to be launching this episode today. I also want to let all of you know that Zen Tempest just launched a new single called Thrive a couple weeks ago, and it is absolute fire. We're going to have all of the links to connect with Zen Tempest in the description of this episode, but I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you're looking for, as I am, my Rolodex is always open to new conscious lyricists, conscious hip-hop artists, conscious songwriters, people that are really feeding into and fueling the future that I want to see, breathing new life into this earth. I'm always looking for musical artists that are opening up these gateways and showing us what's on their heart via their music. So, if you're looking to connect with Zen Tempest more, please check the description of this episode where you're going to find the links to his SoundCloud, his Bandcamp, his Spotify, and let's get into the episode. It's 10:14 in the morning, perfect time to be recording this. Those of you who follow me on Instagram know that I've been guided by ones and fours since April 1st of last year. When I tell y'all that music is such a massive, 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 massive part of my life, I'm not lying. I always used to think that everybody was really obsessed with music, and it was not until a time in 2017 that it was brought to my attention how much music is a part of my life in maybe like a grander capacity than most people. I didn't realize that not everyone listens to music most hours of the day. There's literally not a day that goes by in my life, pretty much, that I'm not listening to music or tapping into music. And as massive a role as music has played in my life through the duration of my life, when I started listening to conscious music, everything in my life changed when I really started listening to what the people that I really admired in music were singing about, rapping about. Everything started changing. I really started aligning myself more consciously with people that were actively bringing forth this future that I envisioned as well. People that were talking about things that really uplifted me and encouraged me, and I felt helped me on my path. So this is a topic that we're opening up on more today. A lot of you have listened to the episode in season 2 featuring rap priestess Lizzie Jeff. Well, this is our king version of that goddess episode. So how do we come across this king? Last year, before the pandemic hit, my husband went to a retreat in Costa Rica for sound design and music production, and it was called Solar Sounds. And Zen Tempest facilitated a workshop on flow and freestyle that my husband went to, and they got to connect. And then he came home, and for season 4, he's like, oh man, you guys have to have on Zen Tempest. Zen Tempest exists in the space between prayer and rap, bridging the gap between the profane and the sacred. He speaks the colors of the eternal dream. With this love of prayer and rap, Gabriel Rima has actually created these facilitations called Flow Dojos, which are these ciphers where people meet up and flow, see what flows out of them, and he facilitates these spaces. In this episode, we're discussing the profoundly impactful magic of wordplay, combining prayer with rap. We talk about Gabriel's reverent upbringing and how he decided to weave the words Zen Tempest together. We talk about what is prayer and why do we pray? What does prayer do? We talk about how to get into a space to channel and what it is that we can do with our own creativity wounds, and also what those creativity wounds can give way to and open up doors and floodgates to. We talk about what is the Flow Dojo and the importance of being held in creative community. We talk about gaining awareness over celebrity culture influence, and also we talk about some of our most influential celebrities that really helped us in our formative years. We talk about Gabriel's fascination and connection with the Marvel Universe, how he loves to shake people awake with wordplay. And oh my gosh, we talk about embracing being the black sheep. I know that so many of us identify as the black sheep in our family, in our community, and it's so important that we know that we have brothers and sisters around us and that we're not alone as the black sheep. We talk about all these things and so much more, and you'll definitely want to stay tuned until the end of the episode to hear about a brand new project that Zen Tempest has in the works for all of us. Before I head into the human design segment of this introduction for our guest today, I want to take a minute to feature this really cute, beautiful comment that we got, as well as introducing any and all of you sacred beings out there who you find Sacred Sister Podcast is a helpful tool on your path to let us know about it in the comments and rating section of your listening app. It is through the accumulation of these ratings, reviews, and comments to us that we get to feel closer to you, that we get to intake some of what it is about Sacred Sister Podcast that is special in your life and the way that it lands with you. So this one came just a couple days ago, and it's just so sweet. I really wanted to share it with all of you. The title of it is Pure Light, Love, and Inspiration. It says, Britt and Hannah have created such a web of magic in the ether space through this podcast. I feel so honored to have come across it and be able to humbly listen to the deep intrinsic wisdom that they share. Even now, listening to episodes from over a year ago, I feel as if I'm right there with them, able to receive the same frequency in this eternal moment. The conversations that flow from these leaders of love and light is awe-inspiring and infectious. Thank you. So sweet. It's so fun, y'all, because we get these comments and I call Hannah or Hannah calls me and we're just like, oh my God, we got a new comment. Like, Sacred Sister Podcast has been around for 2 years and we're still getting equally as excited whenever we have new comments, ratings, reviews. Followers on Instagram, go follow us at Sacred Sister Podcast. When we have more people that are tuning into this all the time, it's just such a blessing to our lives. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us. And be sure to join us on Patreon as well. We created the Sacred Sister Podcast Patreon as a way to get closer to our community and connect on a more intimate, deep level. Hannah is going to talk a little bit more about the Patreon, but we do hope to see you over there. So let's get into the human design. Zen Tempest is a generator, which the majority of the males that we've had on this season have been generators. So keep in mind, 36% of the world's population are generators. And generators are these people who provide continual power and life force energy to the world. These are the people with staying power. Think of a battery generator. I say this every episode. Battery generators are these machines that you're able to plug into to connect you with this power that they're storing inside of themselves and constantly keep themselves generating. So when we look at the incarnation cross of Gabriel, we find that, let's see, his is in the quarter of initiation, where purpose is fulfilled through the mind. And you can find his in gate 37, where the keyword is the family, and it's the right angle cross of planning. So the energy in this cross is to create deals and bargains as a part of forming community. So the structure of communities and institutions are made up of these bargains or compromises. And some of you might be like, what? That sounds like some, very 3D reality type of incarnation cross. Well, it can look like that. For example, we pay local taxes so that we can have public schools and transportation and other community benefits. But the energy of this strives to contribute to the creation, fortification, or continuance of community in whatever shape and form that takes. So that's the key word right there at the end of that sentence. And I think through listening to this episode and hearing about the Flow Dojo facilitations that Gabriel facilitates, you'll be able to understand that maybe it's not so much about the 3D reality. Maybe it's more about getting into the fortification of the mind, getting into the creation, fortification, and continuance of community in terms of artistry, in terms of consciousness, in terms of connecting with our brothers and sisters and coming together in a creative space and keeping that creativity and that artistry alive and vibrant as time moves on. So that's all from me in this introduction. Now we're going to head into Hannah's astrology segment and get into the episode. Hope that you enjoy. Thank you so much for being here. We love, 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 love you. Love, love, love. Hope that your day is going really well, and let's get into the episode.
Hello, sacred being. This is your host Hannah, and we are here in the Inner Blueprint section for Zen Tempest. I am a certified astrologer in Western astrology, and so we're going to look into his astrology chart and see how he expresses his main archetypes. We're going to keep this really short. Obviously, an Inner Blueprint reading can be anywhere between an hour to 3 hours long if you want it to be. We can go really, really deep, but in this case, we're just going to keep this short for like 5 minutes, just to give you a quick overview of Zen Tempest archetypes, and then you can find those archetype energies within the interview as well. So it's a lot of fun. Let's do it. So his sun sign is in Virgo in the 12th house, conjunct his rising sign, which is also Virgo. Gabriel shines his light as the sage, as someone who is here to improve situations, help others, and point out details that other people might overlook. That's really the beauty of Virgo. It is very service-oriented and dedicated. And with his sun being in the 12th house, it brings in this mystical and poetic energy into his life. He is naturally attuned to life beyond the veil, the spiritual realm, the realm that we cannot sense with our 5 senses, but with our 6th sense. So he's combining that beautifully with the Virgo, which is such a mutable earth sign, really down to earth, connected to our surroundings. And at the same time, he has this beautiful ability to tune deeper and to sense energies that aren't visible to the 2 eyes that we have. And he brings all of that out in his music. The 12th house rules music and art, healing, anything that helps us connect with our soul. His sun being conjunct his rising sign as Virgo makes his sun even more important. It makes his sun actually the most important planet in his birth chart. And what that means is it's important for Gabriel to really put himself out there and show his light to the world. He is a born trailblazer and a pioneer, and he's meant to be very direct in his communication so that he can facilitate healing for others. And we can see that also in his moon in Scorpio in the 3rd house. Scorpio moon is very intense and passionate, is not afraid to go deep. It's a fixed water sign. It dives deep into the realms that other people might feel uncomfortable with. It talks about taboos, shadows, transformation. It can be sometimes provocative as well. His south node is in Gemini, conjunct his Mars, and his north node is in Sagittarius in the 4th house. And the south node and north node axis is very important in our chart. The south node is our comfort zone. This is where we've come from. This is also what we came here to integrate. Traumas, gifts, everything can be found in that south node. But often what lies in the south node lies in the shadows, and we might not even be really aware of it. Or we might feel like it's so normal that we don't even see it as special. Or we might feel like we need to hide it because we've got hurt by others because of the way how we expressed that energy. And it's interesting because his Mars is conjunct his south node in Gemini, and Mars is the warrior energy. Mars is the very direct, provocative energy that says exactly what it thinks and does not hold back. Very direct words that can push others, that can trigger others to change, to healing. And that was something that was conjunct his south node, so it was at first uncomfortable for him. It was at first something that he needed to learn more about and integrate more because he came from a family, and here's his north node and Sagittarius in the 4th house. He was born into a family that was very spiritual, right? Sagittarius is the energy of faith and hope, optimism, higher learnings, meaning of life. And he learned to create these rituals and routines, these prayers on a daily basis to really dedicate himself to the divine. And then throughout time, he found a way to implement his Mars and his way of direct communication that he loves, his special gift that he has of transforming others because of the way that he uses his words. So poetic, but still so provocative at times as well. And he found a way to integrate that Mars into his life, integrate his south node. And that is something that really helps him to spread his wings in the north node. And if you're interested in your own chart, this is something to really look into as your south node and north node axis. Because if you feel like, okay, how can I have more success in life? How can I feel more fulfilled? You want to look into your north node. This is how you spread your wings. But you can only spread your wings if you have integrated what lies in your south node. So this is the power of the south node and north node. So I wanted to share this with you because Zen Tempest actually talks about exactly how he has done that in his own life, and it's really beautiful. So if you're interested in getting to know your own chart on a deeper level, I am offering inner blueprint readings on Zoom And you can use the code SACREDSIS on my website hannahchristensen.com to get a special discount as the Sacred Sister podcast listener. And yeah, if you haven't already, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at Sacred Sister Podcast, where we normalize the magic and sacralize the mundane of your everyday social media life. So I'm excited to meet you there. Also make sure to join our Patreon that Britt was mentioning, because we are so happy to build this community and just, build up the sacred sisterhood that we are all craving within ourselves, isn't it? Isn't it so important, especially in these days where we are moving through a lot of changes in this world? It is so important to have our support system and to connect with like-minded souls. So, without further ado, let's move into the interview. Zen Tempest is going to guide us through a beautiful poetry that he created. And yeah, just take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
I'd like to invite everybody listening to take a nice, deep, full breath into the belly and the chest, inviting length into the spine. Exhaling fully and audibly, allowing the shoulders to relax. One more nice, deep, full breath. Exhaling, releasing anything and everything outside of the present moment. Dropping into a space of full presence. And I'd like to begin with a short poem. Breath settles, and the petals start to open up. I'm feeling so alone, and yet I'm feeling so in love. The first step is being present. Yes, it's showing up, and every other step is as effortless as the glowing sun. 'Cause I don't know, and not knowing is enough for me. I feel this molten divinity filling up in me. Slow motion, the synergy of a luscious sweet rush that is warming me up just like a cup of tea. And it's a luxury, this lack of a doubt. It's enough to have me randomly laughing out loud. Call it insanity or call it an epiphany. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's delicious, free energy, epically effervescent and heavenly, sensually and gently replenishing what was dead in me, ecstasy. The pharmacist is the breath in me, splendidly suspended in the splendor of this web we weave. And if I doubted for a second just how precious the never-ending elemental pendulum caressing me was, it was probably because I was fed deceit when I was a young kid drugged by celebrities who celebrated an agenda that was sold to them to sell to me. But I'm older and I've grown since then. And what I've slowly come to boldly understand is how it feels to stand under the flowing water. Damn.
My goodness. That was absolutely beautiful. I'm here literally just crying.
Oh.
Gabriel, welcome to Sacred Podcast. You got me going.
Off to a good start.
We're off to a really fantastic start. You know, I really just want to praise you here in this moment. I'm so grateful that you're showing up here in the world exactly as you are. And one of the things that I knew that I was going to want to talk to you about is just how like words play in the mind. Like, how is it that this flow of these words that are coming from such a deep place of awareness, a deep space of truth inside of yourself, it's almost like my mind can't even comprehend 100% of what it is that you're saying, but the intaking of all the words is like this, it has an effect on me like as time goes on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a mystery that I show up and surrender to every time I play in the space of words. So a lot of things I could say about that, but the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that really beautiful and profound question is that we are language, essentially. Like if you look down at the genetic level, it's literally all just a code, a pattern that organizes and reorganizes according to some coherence. And so our verbal language is some fractal similar thing, right? Except it expresses itself differently as speech.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I got goosebumps when you were talking, and it wasn't even talking. It was just such a, just poetry and prayer in your rap. And I love how you say that, how you combine prayer with rap. And that's really special. And I think that's something that I love to touch more about and talk more about, because when we think of prayer, rap is kind of like the last thing that we would think of. Right? Like usually in this normal society that we're living in, rap, the modern rap or the conventional rap is not so much a prayer. You wouldn't probably call it that way. But I love how you combine the two. And I would love for you to share a little bit more about what is prayer to you?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, so I think there are layers to it, right? So there's a prayer can occur internally without being spoken, right? And that's like one layer of prayer, and there's actual like invocation and what I call incantation, which is the actual, right, like there's an actual then bringing of that that internal prayer and then giving it out as like an offering to the world. So a prayer is it's actually a really good question. I'll just kind of riff, and then you can kind of guide me if any of this interests you. Like, it's all waveforms, right? Life is just all these waveforms, these frequencies, these vibrations, and a prayer is just basically like an intentional waveform, right? It's like you're invoking, like you're trying to go somewhere with that energy, like the energy's moving either way, but you're deciding to take that energy and be like, I want to, it's like, even if it's a prayer of, yeah, I do a decent amount of like ceremony, or I do any opportunity to engage in any type of ceremony that I can, including plant medicine ceremony, but also just like this past weekend, I did a silent meditation retreat. And there are these moments and invitations to like pray for your loved ones, and just to like, like for example, my dad got COVID, and then got pneumonia as a result of that, and then was vaccinated since then, and just got a second vaccine shot. So there's a lot of like stuff that's been happening to my dad's body and field, and he's an older guy, and so there's a lot of, this is me showing up and trying to help him in any way I can, practically, like helping him get some herbs and whatnot for his body to help work through it, and that Eastern Western medicine. But then also, like, at a certain point, it's just out of my hands, that's out of my ability. Like, it's just up between him and God and his immune system, and, whatever forces or intelligence decides whose time it is to stay and whose time it is to go. And so for me, when I did all the things that I could do on the practical stage, I, in ceremony, just had to just, kind of just say a prayer for my dad and express gratitude for the ways he's touched my life and the upbringing he's offered me, and just send him love and his soul, peace and comfort and ease, and wishing these beautiful things. And there's no way to know, exactly how that registers, but there's some sense of faith that like doing that is better than not doing that. Mm-hmm. Right? Even if it's only for me, or if there's also some way he feels it on the quantum level, or, like whatever, it just feels good to do it. And so it's like, okay, I'll just do it instead of not,
Yes, totally. And I love to, you touched on your childhood a little bit and your upbringing, and I love to go a little bit deeper into that and how it started for you that you brought prayer into rap and music.
Yeah, totally. So I kind of, so I grew up in a household where prayer was a thing. My dad, before I was born, got into Eastern spirituality, and particularly he follows a path called Siddha Yoga that was made popular by the book Eat, Pray, Love, because she goes and stays at the ashram of Gurumai Chidvilsananda, who is the female head of the Siddha Yoga lineage, which is pretty cool that they have a female head of their lineage in a pretty male-dominated pantheon of gurus, but yeah, my dad was drawn to them, and a big part of how they worship is through prayer. Like Om Namah Shivaya is a big, but they have a whole lot of prayers that they use and invoke, and mantra is a big tool that they use to help remain centered in the experience of God, kind of. So that was in my household growing up. And then I found, when I was like 13 or 14, I found rap, and it like really just spoke to me as what artists in particular kind of helped, like was like my gateway drug into the world of hip hop. And that was an artist named Immortal Technique. And then after I was exposed to his work, he talks a lot about just like kind of politics, and like, he kind of brings this activist level mentality to his work. And then I got into a lot of like Atmosphere and Brother Ali and Rhyme Sayers Entertainment, which is a pretty big staple of like, I feel like that label, Rhyme Sayers Entertainment, helps a lot of people get into what would be called like conscious rap. So I kind of had this upbringing of like prayer and Eastern spirituality in my household, mantra, and then I found like hip hop, and I've always kind of been this like walking paradox where like I could go like meditate and chant with like my dad and his like chanting and meditation group, and then I could go to like a hip hop show and I could really feel
at home in like both context. And so it's just natural. It's just been this natural journey for me to kind of figure out like what feels good about both of these to me, and what's kind of the baggage associated with each, and how do I kind of, my whole life has been like trying to bring together the best parts of each of those worlds and like leave behind the parts that I'm not super into, you know?
Totally. Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that, because one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about was the actual name Zen Tempest, because I don't hear that word that often, tempest, and it means this violent storm. And one of the first flute solos I had in band in 6th grade was called The Tempest. And I remember just being obsessed with that word ever since. So like just hearing where it is that like how those two words came together for you, I would just so love to know, because there's such a little dichotomy pair, such a sibling pair, such a dual pair. And I'm really curious to know what the inspiration is, because I feel like that polarity feeds a lot in your music. That's what I hear a lot in your music, and I love that.
Mm. I love that question. Thank you. Yeah, it's a cool thing to tune into, because it kind of just like a lot of my poetry, it just kind of finds me and works through me. And so that name like found me, and when I just heard it in my head, I was like, is this a thing? Has anybody used these two words together? Like, and there's been like this, I've been like exploring like what does it even mean throughout my whole journey, right? But initially, right, it's this, okay, so Zen is like this state of peace and equanimity and like kind of meditation, right? It denotes a certain level of like stillness and sort of enlightenment, regardless of like what is occurring externally, like a state of internal peace. But it's particularly rooted in like a lineage, which is like Zen Buddhism. So that sort of carries that, not only that frequency of like peace, but also that like Eastern frequency, right? And then Tempest is more, most people's entry point to that word would be a Shakespeare play called The Tempest. And so that sort of like has this connotation around like the literary piece, or kind of my love for like words and wordplay. That's like one layer to it. But then, right, the actual definition of that word is like, yeah, a violent storm, right? It's just like this, it's kind of, there's like this weird tension there, right? Of you're like, well, wait, how is he like Zen if he's a tempest? And is he like Zen within the tempest? Or I like how it's kind of like, it could be like Zen Tempest as in like you're kind of Zen and there's like a tempest going on around you. But there's also this way, with one of my favorite ways to see these words interacting is like actually a Zen tempest, like that there is a peace in the storm, right? There is like there is this certain way that like there is like an order to the chaos. There is beauty in like the violence of the world, like, and so yeah, they're just two words that have, yeah, they have that sort of, right, Zen has that Eastern, and then Tempest has that Shakespearean kind of Western hit to it, but right, and then at their definition level, their connotation and their annotation, in other words, the things that are associated with each word as well as the direct definition of each word, both have a fulfilling contrast to me.
Totally.
But it's actually interesting because it's one of these things of like those two words, like it was an example of they came to me and I just caught them, you know, and that's such a big part of like art. It's like you're as much acting as just like a channel as you are actively creating something. And so I actually do this thing, for example, called the Flow Dojo, which is an interactive practice that I've been doing over Zoom every couple weeks. And that also has a bit of a polarity and attention to it, right? Because flow is just like it's just like the flow. It's just what happens. It's the Tao, you know. It's just like bam, bam, bam. And the dojo kind of creates like some structure around that, and that to me really incorporate like it really speaks to like what we're doing as an artist in general, not just with freestyle rap, which is what that container is about, but it's a combination of creating certain geometries in your life that are conducive to flow. Like there's a certain element of guiding, there's a masculine quality of dojo, of discipline, of like showing up to the pad and paper such that the flow can then come through, you know what I mean? But it's kind of like, yeah, this balancing act because one can take over,
Yeah.
right? And you have to correct that.
Yes, I love that you mentioned that because that's channeling, right? Like aligning ourselves with our higher self or with the divine, whatever you want to call it. And when we have that alignment, then it naturally flows. I actually just had a client of mine say that to me, and she said, well, it should be so easy. It should just like naturally flow all the time. And I said, well, we first need to align ourselves, and the alignment is the conscious part of it, right? We need to create the space so that the channel can even, so the waters, as you were saying, let the waters flow through you, you know, but you gotta have the pipe in place. Otherwise, it doesn't flow, you know, and it can't be blocked by stuff either, you know. So I would love to know, what are your techniques of bringing yourself into that alignment so that you can let it flow?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Um, it where my mind goes is like there's like particular examples for particular practices, but then there's like this deeper layer to all of it. So like I think okay, so like at the beginning of this, I shared this poem, right? And I said, the first step is being present. Yes, it's showing up, and every other step is as effortless as the glowing sun. So there is something about on one level, it really is just as easy as like if you never sit down in front of your laptop, or you never sit down in front of the canvas, or you never sit down in front of the pen and pad, like it won't happen, right? So that's one thing. But there is also like, so yeah, so just fundamentally, it's like, can be that simple. Like when you have the idea to do it, it can just be an idea in the back of your head, or you can be like, no, I'm just gonna sit down or stand up or whatever, go down to the yoga mat, and just like whatever practice emerges is gonna be fine. If it's 5 yin yoga moves, or I end up doing this whole complex ashtanga sequence, or maybe you need a yoga video, you know, where you're at, and there's no shame in that, right? It's like to help get you like, but no matter what, it like step one is just like go to the mat, you know, because that's where, or you know, whatever, if you do yoga on the grass, go to the grass, you know. You go to the place, you go to the temple to worship, you know. You go like, you go where the spirit of that art or craft is alive. Like if you're a writer and you want to connect more to that, just go to a bookstore, you know, and just like see what happens. See if a book jumps off the shelf. Maybe even just being in there is enough to just inspire you. Just be like, wow, look at all these different people who felt inspired to create a book and then actually did it and then went through the process of getting published. There's thousands of books in this bookstore. You know, it's like, you know, you might not even have to read a book there to get that inspiration.
Even just knowing that the books are out there sometimes is enough to spark the seed of that. I love that. I feel like I don't know what, Hannah, where's the moon right now?
In Capricorn.
Is it? Okay. Oh my gosh. I'm just so emotional today. I've been like freaking Miss Waterworks, but I really want to speak to this because I know there has to be, I mean, at least one person listening right now who maybe hasn't found the temple or tried to go and sit in the temple or gotten curious about what the temple is, where it could be, and the type of temple that could feed them. And I am having this moment here listening to you speak where I'm remembering when I hadn't let myself, just a couple years ago, when I hadn't let myself start accessing that temple because of past experiences, past traumas, past creative bullying, literally had shut down my voice for like 7 years and didn't let myself sing or paint or do anything. So for anyone that might be listening to this right now, who feels like listening to us talking about going to the mat, going to the grass, going to the temple, and you're feeling that it's an edge for you, it is possible that that grass, that mat, that temple could be the deepest medicine that you are able to feel into, to experience at this time in your life. And I encourage you to get curious. Triggers come up for us in our lives to be teachers, to be opportunities for growth. And there's like no greater pride, no greater piece of gratitude that I have for myself, that I allowed myself to get curious and to start singing again and to start painting and to start, just creating, because we live in a society where it can be more, we can be surrounded by more people that don't do those things and that teach not to do those things, or that teach that only certain people are supposed to do those things. And we are able to rewrite those stories and stand sovereign and say, no, actually, I'm a creative being and I have limitless potential to create. And so long as I allow myself the spaciousness to really dive into and see what's inside of me, like, it doesn't have to see the light of day. You don't have to show it to anybody, but just to sit and experience yourself on a creative level and really reckon with some of those stories can be really, really transformative.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really curious.
Right.
Oh,
So that's
you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's only one level. I'd love to hear your question, but I just want to say that's only one level of answer to the question, right? Or one type of answer, because there are also like inspiration comes in a lot of different ways. And one way, for example, that I think I just heard you touch on a little bit is like community, right? So like if you're around a bunch of people that you're not feeling inspired by, it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb to get into that creative space, versus, like I mentioned, the Flow Dojo. That's a space that I created for people who, and again, that word like dojo has, a history and a lineage behind it, right? Because the dojo was a place where, you can learn like, whatever martial art by yourself in your home, but these things have a community element woven into them. The freestyle cipher is like this thing, and again, you can freestyle like in your car alone, and that's one thing, but like to have this community that holds you, a container that helps kind of keeps you accountable, and so it's accountability, it's inspiration. There's just all these levels to what doing these things in community can help bring up. So like I highly recommend, even as somebody who's done a yoga teacher certification, like if I really enjoy going to classes and just showing up and like submitting to like another flow where I can just like show up and allow myself to be like taught, or guided or facilitated. Like the role of the student is so valuable, and the humility associated with that archetype, right, of just being able to, and the fact that you can do that at any stage or any level, that you can go like, you can study anything for any number of years, 10, 15, 20 years, and still show up and just be like, I have more to learn, and surrender yourself to a container or a teacher is like a really powerful skill. And to also not equate that with being like not good enough, right? Like to realize that like we're all on a lifelong learning journey. Um, it's pretty powerful, I think.
Mhm. Yes, and I love that you just touched on that community part and how important it is to recognize who we look up to as well. And in the poetry that you shared with us in the beginning of this episode, you were mentioning about how you were looking up to celebrities before you knew. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. It's it's very fascinating, this world we live in which we have so many opportunities to project our adoration or project anything onto, like, we have so many opportunities. I mean, okay, so like, before, when we were growing up, like, right, we didn't have like Instagram or anything like that, which has opened this whole other floodgate of, now there's like innumerable individuals to like follow, right? Like influencers, right? And kind of interact with them in that way. But like, before that, it was like actors and musicians, right? Are like basically who receive our cultural, like, like your celebrity crush, right? It's like when you're like 13, 14, 15, you're like going through puberty, right? Or whatever, and you like see this, you connect emotionally and like maybe, like sexually with like an artist, like either a musician or a movie star. That's just like, for me, it was like Angelina Jolie is kind of like a good example of like a feminine, individual who I felt like, who touched something really deep within me. And then kind of interestingly enough, Brad Pitt is like a masculine in the movie realm of like somebody that I kind of wanted to be like, and the archetypes that he represented, like, in Fight Club, he's just like, I mean, which is what that whole movie is about two different types of unintegrated masculine behavior, two different types of unintegrated masculine archetypes. One who's like the spineless, he doesn't even have a name. Like, that's how like forgettable he is, like the main character. And then his ego projection of this superstar, rock star, supercut, doesn't give a damn about anybody's opinion, gets in fights. He's like spits out a tooth, just smokes another cigarette and keeps living his life, like those are two, so it's all about his journey of like being this individual who's just been stomped on by governments and blah and blah and blah, and anybody and anything basically by the feminine, never connected with the feminine really, and felt alone in that. Then he kind of like becomes this hyper sexualized, hyper violent version of himself. There's actually a psychic split where he even thinks that's like a whole other person. He then finds out that that's, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read or seen Fight Club, you really should. Um, that like that's actually like him, another side of himself that was so repressed that it like became this whole other personality. And then eventually at the end, he kind of realizes, oh, I don't actually want to be either of these versions of myself. I want to be the integrated version of myself that's like humble and like is a badass, and so movie stars help us exercise and touch unexpressed or repressed parts of ourselves, or musicians. Kurt Cobain was one for a whole generation of kind of this like brooding, sexy, depressed, like, and also all these people have figured out like they have like power through their charisma, right? Through their like, they've tapped into something that has become marketable and accessible, right? That's like so powerful that it actually holds like almost like semi-magical like power over an entire generation of people,
Mhm.
And so yeah, we and there's also this cultural bonding agent as well, right? Because you can meet somebody you've never met before and you can connect over a movie or a film or a musical artist, like somebody who you don't even know. And like I remember I was actually a part of the Black Eyed Peas fan website when I was a teenager. Like I look back on that kind of with like disbelief, like, but that was like this way that people came, and I was like chatting with people like in another state, and I was like, I don't even think this is about the Black Eyed Peas anymore. I'm just like talking to this random person, and we're like connect, like it was like, so anyway, you know, yeah, movies, television, there's interesting force that we're trying to figure out, and there's a dark side and there's also a light side, you know. There's also beauty in the way that those figures can help us connect with certain parts of ourselves, and I think that's why we're drawn uh, to music and movies in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally resonate with that. I feel like whenever you even hear about, oh, who were some people that were really influential to you growing up, talking about those formative years, 12, 13, 14, 15, you can learn so much about a person too. At least I feel. So I would actually love to interject here and say, Hannah, I would love to know who that was for you in your life, and I'll share who that was in my life.
Yeah, so the number one that came up for me was Pink, the singer Pink. In general, I wasn't so into pop culture, and I was always kind of like the outsider of the normal conventional mainstream, which I still kind of am. But Pink was one that really spoke to me. And I think because of her really rebellious attitude of just like, I'm different, I'm me, and just really being confident in who she is. And she had like this album called Misunderstood. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel you.
Totally.
Yeah. So what about you?
Well, okay, so I grew up in a really, really strict born again Christian household, and I didn't start listening to secular music, even a shred of it, until I was like 12 years old. And when Christina Aguilera made her shift from Genie in a Bottle to Stripped, I was so activated. Like, I remember in 7th grade, so I'm the kind of person that like when I'm a fan of somebody, I'm like the biggest super fan. I will watch everything there is on the internet about them. I will rewatch their documentaries over and over and over. And this is the way that I was about Christina Aguilera. Like, I would come home from school and make a thing of popcorn and have a Diet Pepsi and watch her like life story documentary every single day after school, every day. I'm not joking. Every day. I know that MTV Unplugged documentary on her like verbatim. And yeah, I would sing the Stripped album, 21 tracks front to back, after I would watch the documentary every single day. So she was really, really influential to me. And as I got older, I realized, even just in the last couple years, Billie Eilish really, really speaks to me. Really, really inspired by her and her artistry, her vibe. And interestingly enough, those two are both born on December 18th. They share the same birthday. And so they're Sagittarius sun, I'm Sagittarius moon. And I feel like that was another thing that really helped me understand astrology better, because just seeing two women that are so vibrantly expressing that really deep truth aspect of themselves, really shining it outward, it really helped me just come to understand what that energy could look like more inside of me if I were courageous enough to express it. So those are them. And is there someone that really speaks to you right now, Gabriel? Like someone that's really, really inspiring to you right now? I loved seeing that Atmospheres had a really big impact on you. My husband loves Atmosphere, and we know a lot of his music.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you both for sharing. I like that there's the connection of the well, I thought of Lady Marmalade,
Yeah.
right? As or, they're both in that, right?
Totally,
Pink
yeah.
and
And
Aguilera,
here we
right? And
are.
so yeah, right? And so in that way, right, it was almost like it makes right, there was like already culturally there was that, if you guys your teenage selves would have talked to each other about, who you're inspired by, and then you connect. Oh, did you see the one where they join forces? And they're like, and yeah, and both of those women really had the confidence and the rebel archetype, right? And I feel like we love the rebel. We're so in awe of the rebel culturally. And lastly, I find that interesting because my brother's birthday is December 14th. So he has that big Sagittarius energy, that Sagittarius rebellion energy. And so I always saw him. He turned me on to a lot of music and stuff when I was growing up, and he was so into that rebel, and that was like such a pivotal part of his identity, um, so okay, but who inspires me recently? um, Let me sit with that for 1 second. Well, okay, so a couple of things come up. One is my partner and I really enjoy the Marvel movies, the whole Marvel universe, quite a bit, and kind of nerd out on that. So like superhero um, lore, and they're all just like funny and strong and powerful and kind of quirky. I think is what we like particularly about that universe, is like they're not only like super badass, but they're all kind of have like this good like sense of humor and this like quippy, you know, um, this personality behind each of them. I was really struck by the Black Panther film, actually, because it speaks to this resurgence of like natural, like indigenous wisdom, and this sort of ancient future balance that, like, like they have the most awesome super advanced technology, but they're also like plugged into tradition and ritual, and like still have that sort of tribal quality, that close knitness and that connection to earth. They're a culture that's advocating for like for sanity on the planet, but they also have all the cool gadgets and stuff too. And so that kind of was like, there's also like an awesome hip hop element to that music, like the soundtrack in that movie is really awesome. So it really hit a lot of places for me. Another character in the Marvel universe I'm super into is Doctor Strange, and that film, because it's another one that in a different but kind of similar way is like talks about like the chakras and like multi-dimensionality and like time travel, and like he's sort of this super cocky, dumb, like brainwashed, goal-oriented achiever surgeon, and then his hands get ruined, and then he has to kind of go on this journey of discovery. He gets humbled basically, and ends up going on this path east to like Nepal or something, and then he ends up having to like ends up basically getting initiated into these really ancient ways of like astral travel and like deep meditation. And so there's um, I appreciate those characters. Musically, I notice I'm listening a lot to producers more than rappers recently. Like I'm really tuned into the people who are actually creating the music behind these things, because it's interesting how the rapper, or the front man is so often, or the front woman is so often like the person who gets they're that charismatic front. But one really interesting thing for me as a rapper is like I'm so at the mercy of my production, in terms of like, no matter how, and something I've struggled with historically is like making music that sounds as good as it feels, or as like sounds like I can see this vision or hear this vision of like this transmission I want to bring forward. But I've constantly historically been limited by like working with people who just are like, I've always just had my eye on people, like this vision of like working with people who really know their craft. And it's amazing what it's like to now begin working with some people who know a little bit more about what they're doing, and just like it's such a level of alchemy and mastery to actually make something sound good.
Totally.
So I have a lot of appreciation for the people behind the scenes these days.
Yes, and I I just feel so called to go a little bit deeper into your rap too, because as much as the behind the scenes is so important, your rap and your poetry is just so beautiful. And there's especially one song that's called The Cure that really resonated with me. And basically, what it's about is that your medicine is the cure to pretty much all the problems in the world or whatever is triggering you. And I love this one part of it where you say, make no mistake, there's others who may come, those who have misplaced faith in the one, those who have disgraced angels and love. So what will you do when they show up? Are you gonna hide your greatness, play small? Are you gonna cave or scale the great wall? Are you gonna beat the drums and stand strong? Are you gonna act how you have all along? Well, I hope not. This is not time for the old you. Everybody rise right now. You are a soldier. You are a warrior, a lover, a high priestess. You are the keeper of all divine secrets. I love that. So I would love to hear how you relate this to our current situation in this world that's going on.
Wow. That's so cool to have you read that and see it take on a life of its own, like through you. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I'm really glad that that song resonates. A quick, cool little side note about that is I actually had a woman reach out to me, and this is the first time anything exactly like this has ever happened. Though I've had a lot of people say like, "Oh, I love your music," but she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I would love to like send you. I do have like this clothing company, and I'd love to like send you some free shirts or something like that. Your song, The Cure, is that song in particular helped me get out of like an abusive relationship that I've been like struggling with for a while, and I'd love to just express like my gratitude in that way." And that was so like, yeah, it's like I've never experienced anybody. I've never heard it in that like concrete of a way, like I was like on this path, I was like settling, I was like in this space where I was like allowing this certain type of energetic, to happen in my life, and your music actually helped me like pivot onto a new timeline, and actually helped me like choose something differently. And it was almost this way of like, because at a certain point, I just kind of went with it, the whole making music thing. It was like I I had this sense. I used to be really idealistic about like the power of music, and then but then at a certain point, it kind of just became this thing where it was like I also just do it just because I love it. But then it was this remembering of like, oh yeah, this is actually like, I guess does have this potential to like impact people in kind of a more tangible way, and it helped me kind of remember why I started doing this. One reason, for why I started doing this a while ago. So, and kind of on a meta level, that's sort of what I'm talking about in The Cure is like, I'm just like following my bliss, so to speak, following my passion. I just know that like there's something about this whole like, because I can talk myself down, right? I can kind of be like, well, in the long run, like, what is this whole like you're just like talking over music, like if I want to put that voice on, I can, and I can like down talk what I'm doing, and because there is a lot of stuff that needs kind of like some level of more immediate attention, or I don't know, I don't really know exactly what, there's a part of me that can doubt it, the validity of it, but there's a part of me that just like, I think, we all are encoded with some special set of like gifts, some kind of unique like superpower, that's like unique to us. And like when you're just thriving, when you're just feeding yourself wellness, whatever that looks like for you, moving your body, staying inspired, eating well, like that sort of just occurs from a place of like overflow. You're just kind of naturally healing the world from that unique place of genius, and you might have to get through some programming and through some trauma, over some trauma. Like some people, something happened to them around their voice when they were young, and their drunk stepdad told them to shut up when they were singing, and then that lump kind of like they swallow that, and then it's maybe not years later until hopefully at some point they like are like, oh wait, I love to sing, like where does that come from, but yeah, that song is kind of just about, right, it's about this element of just trusting that following your bliss and your passion is a part of the world that we want to see, that we're working towards.
Beautiful, yeah. And what do you mean like exactly with like, make no mistake, there's others who may come, those who have misplaced faith in the one, those who have disgraced angels and love. So what will you do when they show up?
Yeah, so it's kind of like no matter what you do, there's going to be the heckler, there's going to be the person who's trying to tell you you're doing it for some reason other than you're actually doing it, who's going to try to put up blocks and obstacles. It's like, and that can look a lot of different ways. It can look like your drunk stepdad, or it can look like an institution, public teachers dealing with a lack of funding. It's like there's like, but sometimes it is personified as an individual who you encounter with and have to like face, and there is sometimes this moment where you're given this opportunity, these rare moments in life, and sometimes not so rare moments where you're kind of staring at that antagonist in the face and have an opportunity to like say the truth, or do the truth, or do the aligned healed version of the thing, or kind of repeat like the shadow pattern, or repeat the trauma imprint, or kind of play small, not do the thing. It's like, maybe it's like a boss at work and you're kind of ready to quit that job, but instead you kind of like take and internalize whatever, it's like you keep going deeper into this shell of like who you are, rather than like this fully expressed, more vibrant version of who you are. And yeah, how do you deal with adversity? How do you deal with people who don't support your dreams and aren't advocating, for your highest good? What are you going to do when they show up? I don't know. Yeah, what version of yourself are you going to be in that moment?
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, thank you for touching on that. I feel like we're at such a time of reckoning just right now in our lives, in the collective, really. I know for myself at least, when I feel like my worldview or my personal values or beliefs are against the grain of the mainstream narrative, am I having the courage to really stand and say, no, I'm a sovereign being and I'm allowed to ask questions, and I'm allowed to be a voice that's not mainstream, that's speaking on this because we're a community and this is the way community connects right now, because it's hard for us to get together. So we all need to be able to discuss all this openly. And to what you were speaking on at the beginning of when you started answering that, I feel like something that's going on right now, especially much, is this projection of a perception, because it almost doesn't always have to do with what the intention of the creator of the piece of content meant for it coming out, because now all audiences from all walks of life and everything are able to apply their perception of what they think that it is that you're doing and kind of spin that off as truth. And it's just a wild ass time that we're living in. It's a really, really wild time. And I think it's like a lot of the things that I've started saying in your episode have been kind of these like open-ended statements and not so question based. But for anyone that's listening right now that like is feeling any resonance with this talk on standing in your sovereignty and doing what it is that you feel is right, even if it feels like it's conflicting with the people that are around you, I hope that sitting here in this container with all of us who are very obviously choosing that internal truth and expressing it outward, just know that you're one of us. It's okay to have conflicting views, to have alternative beliefs. And at least right here and right now, I really want to be with you and like holding your hand, embracing you, and letting you know that you're not alone. And that even if you're the only person in your family who's feeling like the black sheep or whatever, just know that there are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of black sheeps out there that, feel exactly like you. And it's so important for us all to know that we have sisters and brothers out there. And we can choose our family outside of blood family. We can choose our soul family and our spirit family to help us walk forward in this wild time.
Yeah.
We just really want to thank you. We want to thank you, Gabriel, for being here. We're just so happy that you're putting out what you're putting out. I'm happy that you decided to put the music out. I'm happy that you quieted down that voice that's saying, well, it's just words over music. Because I think all of us understand that we have the option to allow ourselves to express and to continue expanding and put something that doesn't absolutely have to be out there in the world. We choose to put it into the world because we trust that it's coming out of us for a reason. And every single song of yours that I've come across, I'm sure there's tons that I haven't listened to, but the things that I have listened to just hit me in a way that I love pushing pause and thinking about the one line that you just said, because my mind is having a hard time, like it's not picking it up as fast as you're putting it down. So I pause it and I really think about what you just said, and I'm just like, it's insane. That's like my favorite thing about music and creative expression, is just really like tapping into somebody else's energy, tapping into somebody else's creation, and having so much gratitude that they decided to do that and to make it visible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love what you say about the most art is something that you're not being, unless you're like right at like a paper or something and you have like an editor breathing down your neck, like a lot of art is freelance, and a lot of it is like something that can feel like important internally but isn't urgent externally. In other words, like there's nobody who's, unlike other urgent things in our lives that have like a deadline or have like another person waiting on us, it's like a lot of art is something it doesn't get done unless there's a self-sourced urgency, right? Unless you stay on yourself, or you're lucky enough to have a good friend who's kind of like, hey, it's been a while since you released a song, like what are you working on, you know what I mean? Like it is interesting how somehow it can feel like, even though it's like so deeply tied to your sense of expression and like actualization of like what you're here to do, it can be kind of the last thing on the priority list somehow, so I'd love to just encourage anybody who's listening who has that passion that they just know intrinsically is such a part of like who they are and what they're here to offer and what they're here to do. Yeah, I'd love to just urge you to, take that 15 minutes a day or hour a week or whatever, whatever you have, to just invest that time into yourself. And, interesting, like this weekend, turning off technology for the silent meditation retreat, just you can kind of, there's some perspective there around like, oh yeah, like I probably do waste like a decent amount of time like scrolling or doing something, like there are ways to get those 5, 10, 20 throughout the week, hour, 2 hours, that you need to prioritize and focus on that thing. Like, and it can be healthy to just kind of realize whenever we're sinking our time and energy into habits that aren't actually like what we're really about, but have kind of just been somewhere our energy, a pathway, a neural pathway, a habitual pathway that we just kind of landed in who knows when, and then it's actually not really serving us,
Yes, and I love that. And there's like one more line, and I feel like that's also from the song The Cure. And I feel like that's also the reason why this lady that you influenced to finally get out of her toxic relationship, I feel like it's from that line. But it would be interesting to hear that more, but especially here. So it says, fuck all of that trash you were taught, dude. That's not your truth. It is not you. All my queens and goddesses, where you at? What have you not been saying just to attract some asshole? Girl, he does not deserve you. That's not a problem that y'all should work through. Don't stifle the clarity of your soul. Words like rifles and eyes like gold. Yes.
Yeah, that's probably it, right? That's probably the line.
I think that's probably made her like, oh, damn, yes.
It's sort of a dare to kind of step it up, like Yeah, I oftentimes when I was younger and still to this day, you know, it's kind of there's like a desire in me to kind of like shake people,
Mhm.
you know, like just to help kind of like help them reorient themselves, you know,
It's the
and
storm, right?
yeah, there's
This,
something,
the
and actually,
tempest.
right, when we talk about kind of the prayer and then rap, but rap is something different, but there's also like this element of prayer. Well, one thing that really attracted me to rap from being raised in a household that was so like reverent, right, is like how rude it is. It's so rude, and it so gives you permission, that permission slip to like just fucking say what's on your mind and on your heart, and to not like triple sugarcoat it like you know people do, like I do, like I have done, you know. I have this line in this other song called Kamikaze. It's like calm, CALM, Kamikaze. And then I have this line where it says, people say that I'm a softie. Well, not quite. That is just the version of myself that you all liked. And so it's kind of like there's is this, and I'll wrap it back to the Marvel movies and everything too, actually, that I'm not the first person who's found a parallel between, actually, the Wu-Tang Clan were like super into this, how like they basically saw your rapper persona as like you got on stage. There's actually an MC named MF Doom who just passed away recently, and he's a really fascinating MC who literally wore a mask, like this metal mask, when he would go on stage and perform. And he actually amassed like a huge following. I've seen all this fan art and stuff since he's passed, like absurd amounts of like, you're just like, wow, this person really impacted a lot of people's lives. And yeah, there's like this, you do create this alter ego, and you do create this version of yourself that you then, this kind of Tyler Durden, you know, tie it into another another element or thread in the conversation. This Tyler Durden, this alter ego of yourself that's like you give this person certain permissions and liberties of speech and ways of showing up that you might not, like, because I am somewhat soft spoken in my life, and actually through my like path as a hip hop artist, I've learned how to kind of own my voice a little bit more and be a little bit more of an adjutant, be a little bit more of a shaker, waker upper kind of energy. That I was trying to do that, but I couldn't really claim, I couldn't really find that energy within myself growing up, kind of this like humble, shy, intellectual, overweight kid, you know. And then I kind of like found this way to like get a little feisty, you know. And it felt so good. It feels so good. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's impactful. You know, sometimes we need that. We need to be woken up. You know, sometimes when we're just sleeping on something and sleeping in a relationship and we're not realizing what's really going on, we're just blind to what's happening. We need someone that wakes us up so we can see.
Yeah, I really love what you were just saying there about, you know, almost having this like alter ego and giving yourself permission to express yourself in this other side that makes you feel more feisty and releases the fire that's inside and makes yourself more heard more powerfully. And I feel like the archetype that reminds me of is the mask, and how healthy it can be for us to like I went to a songwriting retreat with a Linario, who's a really influential songwriter, and that I just love her work. And she talks about how she takes herself on dates to art museums and whatnot, and she dresses in a way that she would never normally dress. She takes on an accent that she really wants to try out, and sometimes she'll even go like entire weeks or multiple weeks speaking in another accent and just like letting herself play. She talks about it in this way that it's like, allow yourself to wear hats that are so outside of anything that you would ever allow yourself to express yourself as or feel into. It can be so helpful to really let yourself expand and like
stretch your comfort zone and say like, hey, I don't have to wear this forever. I can just try it on.
Yeah, I'm always doing accents in my everyday life. I'm just walking around, I'm talking like this. One moment I'm a Jewish guy, and I don't know, and then another moment I'm something else. Someday, and then one day I go around like this, talking like Indian man. 5 minutes later, it's like we're because we are that. We're this whole cast of archetypes. We're this whole cast of characters. And yeah, to embrace that. I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung's work. I'm a huge fan of astrology. Any lineage that honors the spectrum of who we are.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's a spectrum. It's like a percentage of each archetype of each archetype. Yeah. Mhm. And I love how you combine
Yeah.
them.
Actually, I
how,
wanted to share.
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, what is cool? To weave it, right? Yeah, it is like, yeah, I do like weaving the archetypes, right? Playing in one field and then playing in another. And actually, I wanted to kind of announce this is a project that I have just started working on with another fellow producer. And I actually haven't shared this with the public at all, so this is kind of cool. To share a little bit about. I'm working on a project with a producer who I met at an event called Solar Sound, which is a music production retreat for men that I put on, which is actually, I believe, how I found my way to you, Brittany, through your partner Curtis.
Yes.
So there was another guy at that retreat named Colin. He makes music under the name Nyrus, and we're going in to create what's going to be a 13-track album together that we're just in the beginning stages of creating and visioning. And we're going to be releasing it under the name Indigo Owl, which is going to be our both of us together name project. And it's going to be a zodiac inspired album. So each song we just created Aries along with Aries as that was alive in this, like, as the astrological cycle initiated, and now we're begin work on the Taurus inspired song, and we're going to, throughout this whole solar revolution, as we're in each sign, begin a song that's devoted to the energy of each astrological sign, and then going into next year we'll actually release it. And the whole rest of the album, it's actually something I've been wanting to do for a long time, is about honoring each archetype. So Aries has this, like, I brought Aries energy to the Aries song that has this initiatory energy, this kind of Martian hot, like it's a little more like grinding and kind of has like that
The
flair
warrior.
of like warrior, masculine, and then as we're moving into visioning for Taurus, it's still strong energy, but it's more gentle, it's more grounded, it's I would call it like a little bit more of like feminine, like sensual. And so just gearing up for this whole journey of like exploring all the astrological signs through music is something that I've wanted to do for a while. My dad's an astrologer, so and yeah, we're just finally like doing it. I feel really excited to announce that project here with you.
I love that. Beautiful. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah, we will be counting down the days.
I'm excited to hear. Yes. Beautiful. Well, so thank you so much. We're already at the end. I don't even know how it happened, but it's been already over an hour. But thank you so much for sitting with us, Zen Tempest. Gabriel, that was so beautiful. And we have, before we end our interview, we have 3 sacred questions that we ask each of our guests, and you can answer them in a shorter format.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What does sacred mean to you?
I think everything is sacred. I think sacredness is a quality of awe and beauty and gratitude of the magic in all things, that we can acknowledge, if we choose to.
The bird agrees in the background. Weep, weep.
And then, who is a sacred sister or brother to you, and what does it mean to have a sacred sister or brother?
Who is a sacred sister or brother? Okay. Well, gosh, I can think of a lot. I mean, just scooping off the top of my consciousness, I'll say that anybody who I've produced music with, who I've made music with, actually, that's a pretty sacred brotherhood and creationship, so merging creative energies like that, and then going through that whole process and putting it out to the world and having the care to have all the micro conversations that lead up to something like that. It's a pretty special bond. Yeah.
And what are some ways when you do what are some ways where you turn something normal or mundane into something sacred and magical?
Yeah, I think it just begins with an internal shift of perspective. Like, it can really be that simple. Like, you can be looking at something and all of a sudden a switch can go off and you can think, wow, I'm looking at God. I'm looking at something divine. And it doesn't necessarily need you to burn sage or Palo Santo or incense, even though I do burn those things also for that same effect. But it can be as simple as just reframing it as sacred in your mind.
Thank you. And what would you say is like an action guide that you want to give to our listeners of something if they want to feel deeper into their art and express themselves more fully in that way? What would be like a little step for them to take?
Listen to more music. Listen to more music and bring more intention to your breathing. Sounds really simple, and it is really simple, and it's profound. It's profound what will change. Yeah.
And so when they want to listen to more music, like your music, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me under Zen Tempest on Spotify. And cool little side note there is that there's my artist profile and page, but then there's also my user profile and page, and I encourage you to follow me on both, because on my user page I'm actually uploading new playlists of music every day. And that's something we didn't really get so much into, but I'm actually working on a whole project called the Anamineral Codex, which is playlists that are inspired by the frequency and archetypal energies of plants, animals, herbs, and minerals, And I've made over 150 playlists so far, and the full complete codex will be 333 playlists when it's finished, all inspired. Like Obsidian Jaguar, for example, is one of the playlists, or Amethyst Owl, right? Or like, so they're all kind of have these different, it's like a library of sounds that you can browse by, you know, what animals or minerals or elements are speaking to you recently. So yeah, you can catch my personal stuff, Zen Tempest artist profile, and my other stuff, my curations of other people's music under my user profile, also Zen Tempest. So
Awesome. I love that you touched on that because I saw that you had a bunch of know what the project was about. So I was even going to ask if it was okay if I shared in the description of this episode one of the playlists, just to give people, you know, an idea of what it's about. But I love that it's such an intentional project. That's so dope. I'm so excited to start listening to them myself.
Actually, that project has been taking more of my creative energy than my hip hop and rap has recently. Actually, it's something I'm really passionate about because there's so much good music out there that I want people to be able to intentionally decorate the soundscape of their life, and I'm creating a way to sift through the infinite amount of music out there by kind of just tuning into what you're feeling in that moment. And I found a way to do that feels inspiring and cool for me. And so, yeah, I really want that to be shared by people.
Beautiful.
That's
I'm totally gonna check out the Amethyst Owl.
Yeah.
The owl is like such a spirit animal of mine, and I love working with amethyst. So that's gotta listen to it. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gabrielle.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of our listeners who are here with us at the end of the episode. We hope that you really enjoyed that. We hope that you do, if you feel so inspired to connect with Zen Tempest, Gabriel, beyond this podcast. We hope that you do so. You can find all of his information and links in the description of this episode. Thank you again for joining us here today, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks for another brand new episode.
And then Britt and I will hop onto our Patreon too and share a little bit more about our private stories and our commentary to this episode. So if you want to tune into that, you're welcome to. And yeah, we wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you for having me.